Some people believe in curses. Others laugh it off, saying it's all just superstition. But I learned, in the worst possible way, that there are things out there that don't care what you believe. They simply exist. And wait. And when they find a crack, they slip through. They take shape. They choose. Her name was Annabelle. And no, I'm not talking about the movie doll, the dressed-up, exaggerated version with glass eyes and an antique gown. I'm talking about the real thing, the rag doll, the one that was locked behind blessed glass with Latin prayers and sealed with chains. The one the Warrens called the most dangerous object in the collection. The one that, to this day, no one dares to touch. But I touched it, and not because I wanted to. Not because I was brave or skeptical. It was because, well, because somebody had to clean the damned basement where she was kept. At the time, I worked as a conservation assistant in a private center for occult objects. A sort of hidden museum. No, it wasn't open to the public. Most people didn't even know it existed. But we received artifacts from all over the country. Books, boxes, mirrors, paintings, and yes, dolls. When I was hired, I signed a confidentiality agreement that basically said, "You will see things. Do not talk about them. If something happens, you agree it's nobody's fault." A sheet of tiny letters. And me, I just signed without thinking twice. The first week, I stayed upstairs, sorting papers, labeling boxes, nothing unusual. But eventually someone got sick, or said they were sick, which now seems more likely, and I was assigned to the basement. It was big, cold even in summer. No windows. Just those fluorescent lights that take a second to flicker on. The shelves were heavy iron, each one packed with dozens of objects. Some were locked with padlocks. Others had symbols painted on them that looked like dried blood. My supervisor was clear. Don't touch anything without gloves. Don't speak out loud. And if something seems to have moved, pretend you didn't notice. He laughed afterward like it was a joke. But his eyes didn't laugh, and that left me on edge. Annabelle was on the last shelf of the last aisle. A reinforced glass case, covered with religious signs on every side. There was a little plaque at the bottom with a warning. Under no circumstances open. She looked harmless. A bit dirty, maybe. Like an old toy left too long in a box. Her eyes were just two black sewn buttons, but I swear they had depth. Like they were watching me, measuring me. That day my task was simple. Wipe surfaces with a damp cloth. I followed the instructions exactly. Gloves, slow movements, no humming or talking. Until I noticed something. Annabelle's case was dirty on the inside. Dust had gathered in the corners of the glass. Impossible. The case was sealed. How could anything have gotten inside? And that's when I made the mistake. I leaned closer, with no intention of opening it. I just wanted to look. I crouched, studied the corners of the glass. And then, I heard it. A soft click. The kind of sound you recognize even without seeing. A latch, like something unlocking from the inside. My stomach turned to ice. I froze, eyes fixed on the glass. The lid was slightly open. There was no draft. No one else was there. And yet, it was ajar. And the doll wasn't quite in the same position. A chill ran down my spine. I stepped back, tried to stay calm. I wrote in the report that the case looked poorly sealed and left it at that. Didn't touch anything. Went upstairs as fast as I could without running. That night, I had the first dream. It wasn't a nightmare, not in the classic sense. No blood, no screams, no monsters. Just her. Sitting in the middle of a dark room, motionless, staring at me. I woke up drenched in sweat. And the feeling that she was still there with me didn't go away. The next day, I went back to the basement. The case was locked. No opening. The supervisor swore. No one had touched it. That everything was exactly as it had always been. But I knew. She had seen me. And maybe she liked it. There's something no one tells you about working with the occult. You don't have to believe in it. You just have to stay close long enough, and eventually, something will look back at you. That morning, when I opened the basement door, I knew something was wrong. Nothing looked different at first glance. The lights buzzed with the same annoying hum. The air was heavy, as if it had never truly moved. But there was something in the smell. A metallic tang at the back of my throat, almost like old mold mixed with rust and sugar. An impossible smell. And then I noticed. The security cameras were off. There were 4 cameras spread across the basement, 1 in each corner. Always working, always recording. That day, the red lights that meant they were recording were off, completely dead. I went upstairs to tell the supervisor, but he answered calmly that the system was being updated, that there was no problem. No problem? With Annabelle loose? I should have quit right then and there. I went back down. Took a flashlight with me, even though the lights were on. The sound of my steps on the concrete floor echoed in a way that made it feel like there was more than one person down there. At certain moments, I swear I heard another pair of feet dragging behind me, and every time I stopped, the sound stopped too. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Low. Hoarse. Torn. It wasn't a phrase. Not even a word. It was like someone clicking their tongue against the glass, an attempt to communicate without vocal cords, a sound that shouldn't exist. I froze. My hands trembled, but my feet wouldn't obey. I needed to turn around. I needed to look. And at the same time, every part of me begged to leave. I turned. Slowly. She was still in the case, but now with her head slightly tilted, as if watching me more closely. I couldn't take it. I bolted up the stairs, locked myself in the bathroom, and threw up. My eyes stung. My face was pale as chalk. And for the first time, I felt I wasn't alone. At home, the dream returned. I woke up screaming. The next day, I decided I wasn't going back down to the basement, that it was too much. But the supervisor stopped me before I finished the sentence. Look, I know the atmosphere down there is heavy. Everyone feels it. But if you refuse a shift now, they'll fire you. Do you think anyone will hire you after you worked only 2 months in a place like this? He hit me right where it hurt, and once again, I went. This time, I decided I wouldn't look at her. I'd walk straight past her aisle, no eye contact, no approach. But before I even made it halfway across the room, the light went out. Everything was swallowed in absolute darkness. My flashlight wouldn't turn on. My phone, fully charged, froze. The only sound was my breathing, and its echo trying to stay calm. Then, I heard it. Glass. Cracking. As if something was pressing from the inside out. As if the glass of the case was breaking. A snap. Another. A low, sharp sound. And then, absolute silence. And in that silence, I heard my name. Not shouted. Not whispered. Just spoken. In my own voice. It was like me, calling myself. But from somewhere else. From inside the case. I ran. Stumbled up the stairs. Left the building without giving explanations. That night, I locked every door in my house. Covered every mirror. Smashed my car radio because it turned on by itself and started hissing. A hiss that sounded like muffled laughter. And still, when I went to sleep, she was there again. But this time, not in the room. She was inside my closet, waiting. I went straight to the point. Where did this come from? The receptionist, an old woman with a frail voice and vague gestures, just said, "It was delivered last night. They left it at the front desk with your name." Who left it? We don't know. They just asked us to give it to you this morning. Did they say anything else? She shook her head. There was no note, no sender, no message. Nothing. Just the doll. I took it to my room, too curious to ignore it. And there, in the solitude of thin walls and damp carpet, I opened the box. And there she was, Annabelle. What was left of her, at least. She didn't look like in the movies. Or maybe she did, and I just didn't want to admit it. But there was something worn about her, Not old, exactly. Something else. As if she had been forgotten for far too long, and now, finally remembered. She was angry about it. The glass eyes were cloudy, cracked at the edges. The dress, dirty and patched, still carried a smell that was old and sweet. Not mold, expired vanilla. I stared at that doll for too long. Long enough to realize she wasn't just some broken antique. She had been left there. Not sent. Not gifted. Left. Like someone abandoning what they couldn't carry anymore. I should have gotten rid of her that night. But I didn't. I simply couldn't. I placed the doll on the dresser, turned her to face the wall. I needed her not to look at me. That was all. And even then, when I woke up in the middle of the night, I felt it, before even opening my eyes, that she had moved. I turned, and there she was, facing me. No sound, no scrape of wood, nothing to betray the movement. But she had turned, watching me, with those opaque, empty eyes. I stood up slowly, breath short, walked to her, too afraid to touch her again. With just the tip of my fingers, I turned her back around, making sure she faced the wall. I went back to bed, convincing myself I was just tired, tense, suggestible. I slept. Woke up with the same weight, the same discomfort, the same cold, not in the air, but inside me. And there she was, again, facing me, as if she wanted to talk, as if she had already been waiting. And it was in that second that something changed. I stopped thinking it was coincidence. I stopped convincing myself it was just a doll, because it wasn't. She had chosen me. As the days went by, the room began to change. Not physically, not exactly, but the atmosphere, that invisible weight you can't explain, only feel. Lights flickered even with no electrical problems. Reflections didn't line up. Dampness crept in where it used to be dry. And the smell, that sweet, rotten vanilla, filled the air at random times, like perfume sprayed into nothing. Sometimes the closet door cracked open by itself. Sometimes the fan stopped spinning, even though it was still plugged in. And, with frightening frequency, the TV would turn on by itself, always on a channel with no picture, only static. But what truly broke me was the mirror. I was shaving when I noticed it. My reflection didn't move like I did. For a fraction of a second, it hesitated, didn't follow my motion. I blinked. And then, perfectly synchronized, it went back to normal. I started avoiding mirrors, avoiding looking at myself, avoiding her. But it didn't matter. She was there, on the dresser, on the chair. Sometimes I could swear closer to the bed. She occupied the room as if she were breathing in it, as if she needed the space, the energy, my presence. And the more I ignored her, the more she seemed to demand attention. And of course, I thought about running. But something held me. As if leaving would anger her. As if she would follow. No matter how hard I tried, my eyes always returned to her. Annabelle. The doll that now took up more space than she should in my life and in my mind. It was as if she absorbed time. I blinked, and hours were gone. I tried to work, eat, sleep. But everything revolved around that silent presence. There was a pattern, a rhythm that repeated. First, the sound. Then, the faint shift in air. Then silence. That kind that comes before a whisper, but without the whisper ever arriving. And then, the gaze. Yes, the gaze. Because I swear she started looking at me differently. At first, it was just static, fixed glass eyes. But, slowly something changed. The subtle tilt of a head, a slight misalignment, the feeling that if I blinked too long, I'd miss a movement, like a missing frame in an old film reel. One night, I woke up on the couch with the TV still on, but muted. The screen showed a dead channel, white noise that sounded like words without language. The doll was where I had left her, except now her head was turned directly toward me. only I had placed her facing the wall. I stood slowly, as if the air itself had thickened, walked over to her, and for the first time touched her. Her skin, the old rigid fabric, felt different, rougher, almost warm, as if it was holding something inside, something breathing faintly. At the back of the dress, there was a small tear. I didn't remember seeing it before. Maybe it had always been there. Or maybe not. That's when I found it. Inside the tear, carefully folded, was a piece of aged paper, and written in shaky, almost erased letters, was my name. My name. That paper hadn't been there. It couldn't have been there. Impossible. That doll had come from another state, from a woman I swore I had never met. And now it contained my name? Not signed, not addressed. Just that. My name, repeated over and over like an incantation. As if she didn't just want to remember me, but to own me. To recognize me. I spent the rest of the night on the floor, staring at that doll as if she were a mirror of everything I couldn't understand. There was no denying it anymore. She knew who I was. And worse, she was waiting for me to find out why. There was a night when the feeling changed again. This time it wasn't just discomfort. It was presence. I can't explain it better than that. It was as if someone was there. Not the doll, exactly. But something bigger. Something using the doll as a facade. A tool. I had left her on the chair in the corner of the room, like I always did. And I tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. My mind hammered, pulsing louder than my heartbeat. And then, instinctively, I turned my head toward her. But the chair was empty. I didn't see her on the floor. Not in another corner. Just an empty space. As if she had never been there. And that's when I felt it. She was in the room. But not visible. The air grew heavy, hot. Every breath was a brutal effort. And the certainty was cold, absolute. She was no longer contained in that stitched fabric body. She had spilled out. And everything started to feel wrong. The paintings on the wall tilted, though I knew they were straight before. The curtains swaying as if touched by an invisible breeze, though the windows were shut. And then I felt something move against the back of my neck. Slow. Warm. Almost human. I didn't have the courage to look behind me. I stayed there, frozen, pretending to sleep, pretending not to notice. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't the doll anymore. It was what lived inside her, and now, it was testing me. From that night on, things stopped being coincidence. The doll began appearing in places I hadn't left her. In the bathroom, in the kitchen. Once, inside the car, in the back seat, facing me. I swore I had gotten rid of her. Left her in a university storage room where I worked, sealed in a box covered with coarse salt and symbols a spiritualist friend had given me. But 3 days later, there she was. Sitting on my couch, with the same opaque button eyes, the same torn dress, and that sense that she knew. She knew I had tried. By then, it was as if I wasn't just someone who had found the doll, I was someone she had chosen, and I couldn't understand why. I started losing weight, having memory lapses, objects disappeared, strange scents filled the air, not pleasant, not foul, just displaced, out of place. And the worst, I began having dreams that weren't mine. Visions of places I had never been, rituals, people crying, blindfolded, sitting around a circle drawn on the ground. Dreams in which I wasn't me, I was her. And in those dreams, the doll wasn't just an inanimate thing. She was a child, or maybe something pretending to be a child. Black hair covering her face, skin nearly gray, and a whisper saying, "Now it's your turn to carry." Carry what? I didn't yet understand. But I knew I was getting weaker. That something inside me was giving way. And that maybe, instead of me possessing the doll, she was possessing me. On the 9th night, I remember well because I marked each one on the calendar, something broke inside. Me. It wasn't a sound. Not a scare. It was silence. The kind of silence that shouldn't exist in an apartment in the middle of the city. It was absolute. Dense. No neighbors, no cars, no elevator hum. Nothing. As if the world had been paused. Or was watching. I was sitting on the floor of my room, the doll 2 meters away, motionless on the dresser. But something about her was different. For the first time, her eyes seemed focused. Not on the void, on me. I don't remember falling asleep. But I know I woke up. In the middle of the room. Standing. With the doll in her arms. I don't know how long I stood there. Or what I did during that blank space of time. I only remember the sensation that something had passed through me. As if my body were a hallway, and something had walked from one side to the other. And for the first time, I heard something. Not a sound in the room, but inside my head. A thin voice, like it was speaking through a tube, said, "Let me show you. Show me." What? I started seeing flashes. Chopped up, disconnected images. A child on fire. A woman locked in a closet, screaming. A doll being buried in a hurry, upside down. And then, the face. The same face of the little girl from my dreams. But now she was smiling. And her eyes had nothing childlike left in them. And I understood. She didn't want to kill me. She wanted me to remember. Remember what? I don't know. But since then, the silence came back. Only now, it has a name. And it breathes on my neck when I sleep. I tried to get rid of the doll. The next morning after that night, if it really was morning because the clock was frozen at 03:03, I put Annabelle inside a cardboard box, wrapped it with electrical tape, then plastic bags, then another box, and more tape. I took everything to the city's industrial park. I waited for the chemical waste to be collected, and I left it there. I came back home feeling like I had taken a lead vest off my chest. For the first time in days, I slept, and I dreamed. This time, there was no little girl, no hallways, no whispers. It was me, sitting in the living room of my apartment, with the doll in my arms, smiling. But something was wrong, on my face. It wasn't a smile of peace. It was for her, like someone bowing, like someone accepting. I woke up sweating, my face burning hot. I staggered up and went to the kitchen to drink water. And there, on the bedroom floor, where I had already removed everything, was the box, sealed, intact, with her, inside. The next morning, I moved out of that apartment. The following week, I moved out of the city. Today, I live in a small place. I don't use mirrors anymore, nor furniture with reflective surfaces. And every night, before sleeping, I put on headphones with ambient music. Because silence talks. And I've learned there are certain things that don't want to scare you. They want you to listen. To remember. And if possible, to tell others. I don't know if what happened to me was real. Or if it was all a delirium of an exhausted, isolated, vulnerable mind. But if one day you find a doll, even harmless, even ugly, even plain, and it looks like it's staring at you, don't stare back. Because that's exactly what it wants. Now you tell me, have you ever lived or felt something that nobody would believe, but you still feel it today deep in your bones? Then like this video if you also understand that not everything can be explained. Subscribe to our channel and send us your story. The Zakir. Strange, the bizarre, the thing nobody believed when you told it. Here, we listen. Maybe it'll be your story that keeps someone awake in the next episode. Until the next story.